thank you so much for joining me in my talk here. You know, it's so thrilling to watch the data engineering community of practitioners, leaders, and enthusiasts come together to come and share and learn their individual experiences with data engineering. I'm Vignesh Sukumar, I'm with Optimizely, and today I wanted to talk about a story of how we broke down data silos at Optimizely, and I hope this is actually a topic that is very relevant and useful to many of you, and hope we can get a little bit more understanding and intuition into how to detect these kind of scenarios of data silos happening in an organization and how to bring them down and how we were able to achieve a lot of business results with that. So first, just a little bit about myself. My background has been in data processing for the last many years. I've been fortunate to build and grow many data engineering teams at startups. A lot of varied aspects of data engineering around distributed systems, infrastructure, analytics, targeting systems, data science, and site reliability. And I started out with, of late with startups, I started out with Box. Early on, I was one of the founding engineers in their cloud storage group, where we built one of their core architectures for cloud storage when they pivoted into the enterprise. And then from there, I moved on to Platfora. So Platfora was, we built one of the first BI products, self-service BI products on top of Hadoop and Spark. We actually managed to get ourselves up on the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and Gartner called us as the golden standard for BI on Hadoop and Spark. And there, Platfora was actually later acquired by Workday to form the Prism Analytics business unit within Workday. And then from recently, over the last couple of years, I lead a rockstar distributed systems team at Optimizely. And we'll be talking about the problem we encountered at Optimizely and how we were able to solve it. But this team actually builds the data platform at Optimizely that's foundational for all of their products. And as part of building the data platform, we are also building real-time streaming pipelines that's pushing on the limits of stream processing. And so personally, I strongly believe that building a core enterprise-grade data platform and the teams surrounding that is going to distinguish you from your SaaS business. You're going to be competitively advanced than your competitors when you build such a data platform. And so that's why I'm so thrilled to be able to be part of this community and this conference and share and learn experiences. Also, from a personal note, we have our second son. This is actually our two boys, so nothing else scares me in life anymore now. Right, so talk outline. So we'll begin by talking about Optimizely, what Optimizely does, and I want to give a little bit of background about our experimentation and personalization products, and we'll talk a little bit about A/B experiments, and then we'll see how you can set up A/B experiments and how customers derive value from it. And then we'll also talk about the results page, which is actually a very, very important part of experimentation and how you're making decisions based on experiments. And then we'll also talk about the events processing pipeline. This is the pipeline I talked about my team building at Optimizely. And then hopefully this will give us enough context for setting us up for the problem, which is really about a data trust issue that we encountered within Optimizely, which is about how our customers are viewing our data when they align it with the rest of the competitors that we go against. And so this is really at the heart of trust of customers on our data. And then I want to also segue a little bit and talk about why this is actually a larger problem of data silos within organizations. The key point that I want the audience to take away from this is how you want to think about data silos within your organization. Optimizely is actually a small company, 400 people at this time, but many of the organizations are much bigger. And so the problem actually gets compounded, gets easily apparent in bigger organizations. And so that's the message I want to take the audience to take away from this. And then we'll talk about our solution to this problem, which is a combination of techniques and scalable tools. Each organization will have their own solutions and depending on the context that they have, but it's very important to think about what are the key ingredients that go into a solution. So for us, it was a combination of techniques and tools. And then more importantly, what people also don't realize, this is an organizational problem. So it takes a lot of effort to train for people to understand where these tools and techniques are and be very consistent. And then we'll talk about the business results that we were able to achieve with the solution. So spoiler alert for this talk is that I'm not going to go deep into the technical details. I mostly wanted to actually talk about the organizational impact because I wanted to give a very real-world example of this, and I think it's very important to understand that aspect of these kind of issues that are dragging down your business results. And then finally, the call to action is really about how to identify and remove silos in your organization. So with that, Optimizely. So what do we do at Optimizely? Optimizely is actually a leader in digital experience optimization. Experience optimization is actually a framework with which we help our customers optimize all the digital touch points they have with their users. So the goal is really, by optimizing these digital touch points for customers, you are able to increase user engagement for your customers, and thereby you are increasing your conversion rates. So conversion rates could be different, conversions and conversion rates could be different for different customers depending on the verticals they have. If you're a retail customer, all you care about for conversions are all of your visitors who are adding items to cart. Are they checking out? Are they paying for that? If you're a media customer, you're worried about, or you're concerned about whether your visitors are spending longer on your website. Are they reading more articles? Are they spending more time? That's really the key here. So the goal really is to be able to increase the engagement and conversions for whatever vertical that you are in. So the Facebooks, Netflixes, Googles, Ubers, and Amazons of the world really know about this. They actually have full-fledged experimentation teams that they have built within their company, and they're launching their products with experience optimization and with experimentation. And the goal for Optimizely is actually to take this concept and democratize it to the rest of the online businesses. And so that's really what Optimizely is trying to do here. So as part of this experience optimization, experimentation and personalization are key concepts here. So Optimizely has key products and platforms that are providing experimentation and personalization products for customers. And we do this with multiple channels. Web, full stack is really about how you bring optimization and personalization and experimentation into the backend systems of your product. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And mobile and OTT channels. OTT is over-the-top boxes. This is your Apple TVs and Kindle Fire and all of that. So this is really basically all of the digital touch points, most of the channels that you interact, a customer interacts with their users. And with all of these different channels, what we hope to do at Optimizely is that we want to build, and we have built, the next generation test and learn system so that customers can actually test their ideas and put an end to digital guesswork. This is all about how you can take ideas with experimentation and make sure that you have a scientific backing for whether those ideas really move the needle for you. And so as part of these products, one thing that I didn't actually mention is that this gets actually packaged along with all of our products is our industry-leading stats engine. So the statistical engine is basically the engine that is helping us with making decisions that is coming off of the experimentation and personalization products. And I'll talk about why that's very useful for customers. And then Optimizely is actually focused primarily on the enterprise and the corporate segment. So we have close to 3,000 plus customers, and we're pretty fortunate to have 26 of the top 100 Fortune 100 customers as customers for us. And we have customers all over the different verticals: finance, retail, media, and travel. And these customers are using Optimizely in multiple different ways because, like I said, for each vertical, the goal for every customer really is to be able to how to increase user engagement, how to improve their conversions. And so, for example, for media customers, some of them are using Optimizely for doing headline testing. So every day in the morning, when you open up NewYorkTimes.com or CNN.com, they are running experiments to see which headlines in your in your main page is causing users to click more. So they are running a test there, and it's a very short-lived test. So these, and then obviously retail customers, they are trying to improve every aspect of their shopping experience. And then airline customers are wanting to find out, are actually releasing new features by testing it on customers first and then rolling out to the rest of the bigger user base. And so that's just a varied use case of how customers in different verticals want to make better with user engagement. And then in terms of competitors, we typically find that in most of the deals, we go up against Adobe Analytics and Google Analytics. And these are products, there are certain aspects of these products that we definitely go head-to-head against with. Experimentation, I talked about experimentation, personalization, and a key core component of experimentation is an A/B experiment. What's an A/B experiment? It's basically starts with a hypothesis. So ultimately, what we are trying to do with the goal for A/B experiments is to take an idea that you have and that anybody has within a company that moves your KPI, your key performance indicators, and to scientifically validate and quantify that idea, whether it actually moves your KPIs or not. So typically what it starts out with is you have a hypothesis, you codify it as an idea, and then you take your status quo, which is, let's say, in your, an example that I put up here is a demo site of a retailer called Attic and Button. And the A in the A/B experiment here is the control, which is basically the status quo that you have. And then you start off with an idea that, let's say, you change the cosmetic nature of the website. Like, let's say you change the buttons here, the color of the buttons here. Or in a more deeper sense, if you want to change the search algorithm, let's say if you want to change the backend search algorithm to give you different search results, you take an idea and then you basically create multiple variations of the customer experience of the site, and that's the B part of an A/B experiment, which is basically what is the new proposed challenger for this, and then you basically have both the control and the different variations, and you show it to a part of your user base in a random fashion. And essentially what you want to do is, once you show it randomly to different visitors, random variations to different visitors, what you want to find out is there a statistical way that one of these variations is a winner to move your KPIs, right? So in this case, an example that I have in this GIF image is, this is actually the homepage of Attic and Button loaded up within Optimizely, and Optimizely actually lets you create these different variations cosmetically. So for example, in this case, we are changing the title here, and then we are also changing the color here. And then what we are really doing here is creating multiple variations of this. And then once you've created variations, the next step in an A/B experiment is you choose the metric that you want to see, what you want to track here. So for example, the metric here is, since this is a retailer, I want to see whether this increases the people buying the product. So I want to, it's very easy to configure within Optimizely how you want to track these purchases. So that's the metric here. And then once you create these variations and once you create these metrics, what you want to do here is launch the experiment live. So launching an experiment live means that you're actually showing it to your real production visitor user base. So the way typically this is done is, this is the experiment, the control, and the variations are shown to a small percentage of your overall traffic, typically 5 to 10% of your overall traffic. And each visitor of your website gets to see a different variation of that. So some of them might see stylish new looks, some of them might see stylish new hats, if that's the other variation, and then some of them might see different colors, depending on what variations you create here. And then you start collecting the user behavior, like how are they moving your KPIs? And I'll be talking about how to interpret results from that. But essentially, what you're doing is, once you launch the experiment live, you can decide to run however long you want the experiment to run. You can actually run it for a day. I talked about some media customers. Typically, the use case for that is just 10 minutes, 15 minutes of testing. You can quickly see where the user engagement is from there. Whereas in the case of a longer experiment, sometimes it can run for a month or two, depending on what you really want to accomplish from there. And so variations and then metrics. So those are the key parts of an A/B experiment. And then from there, typically where people end up going is the experiment results pages. So this is one of the key parts of the product and in any A/B experiment. So what you're seeing here is, actually, I'm really sorry for the poor quality here. It's a GIF image, but let me try to walk you through here. So there are 3 rows here, the original column, variation 1, and variation 2. And on the, so those are the rows. And then on the columns, you have unique conversions and conversion rates. So these are the metrics that the customer chose. In this case, what we wanted to see is whether this moved the needle for people making the purchases. So conversion rates is actually the purchase here. So after a day of running, I think it's been running for less than a day, we are clearly calling out one of the variations as a winner. This is the winner that basically, where users have clearly shown that users who saw that variation actually had a much higher conversion rate. And a lot of this number crunching and calculations from here have deep roots in statistics. So you want to make sure that whatever results you are projecting here is statistically significant. And that's really where our industry-leading stats engine product comes. And we've partnered with a lot of researchers in Stanford University to be able to build this product. But essentially, this stats engine is actually, the way we differentiate ourselves from our competitors is that this shows 30% fewer false positives. And so when Optimizely says, on the confidence interval here that it's statistically significant, it means that the experiment is over and that we are declaring a winner. And so the goal for this overall business process is that once you've identified a winner, it's basically Optimizely scientifically saying that this variation is causing a much higher conversion rate. And so what a customer typically does is they take this variation and then they make it as the default experience for everybody, because it is scientifically proven to be much higher converting. So why wouldn't you want that to be the experience for everybody? And so that's how we close the loop here in the whole business process. And so typically, if you think about huge online businesses that are doing millions of transactions and millions of dollars in business every day, even a slight percentage point ticks in conversion rate is going to be huge on your numbers. And so that's why it's this whole concept of experimentation and A/B experiments is so powerful to be able to quantify and validate an idea. So what you're essentially doing is you took an idea that anybody in your organization could have had to move the KPIs. Was how much did your new search algorithm improve your conversion rates, or how much was your marketing campaign worth in adding new leads? So those kind of things have been generally fuzzy and digital guesswork so far. And so what we hope to do is to be able to validate and quantify that. And so that's basically the basics of experimentation here. So for example, just to kind of reassert the use cases here, for media customers, it could have been headline testing, where you could have shown that more visitors were lingering on your web pages. And by the way, the metrics actually could be very different for very different types of experiments. So for example, it could be the amount of time somebody spends on a web page, or it could be, or if you're launching an experiment between 2 search algorithms, you can actually experiment on latencies for the results that you get from the search algorithm. So it's very varied. It can be numeric, it can be dollar-based, it can be, it can be any different data types. You get the idea. So from here, I want to open up the hood on our event processing pipeline. So this is basically the backend with which we are able to show you the results and in real time. So the key concept here is how do we able to do this in real time? And so on the left is actually part of the, on the left of the dotted line is how our customers are running experiments and where they are running experiments. So typically, most of our customers run experiments on, are running experiments on their web, on the browser. So basically, you're opening up a web page and experiments are running and the visitors are interacting with it and you're collecting user clickstream data. And then there is a whole part of our product called Full Stack, which is basically experimenting on your backend systems. So you're launching a new search algorithm and you basically want to experiment there. And so we have a product called Full Stack, which basically provides you SDKs to be able to get those clickstream events. And so all of these events go into our, so Optimizely is a hosted service, it's a SaaS business, so it comes into our event ingestion queue. And typically we get about close to 7.5 to 8 billion events a day. And if you think about it in terms of media customers and retail customers have very planned traffic spike days like Cyber Monday. Whereas media has a lot of unplanned events. Most of the spikes that you get in media are very unplanned. You just an event happens and then traffic spikes. And so the event ingestion system has to be able to absorb all of these user click events across all of the experiments that are running for our customers without dropping a single event. So that's really a big challenge. And then from there, we move it through our real-time stream processing system, which is basically adding a lot of enrichment, adding a lot of, doing a little bit of pre-aggregations and stuff like that. And ultimately, we put this in our results store database, which basically applies all of the, what we call attribution rules. So these are rules that are, that Optimizely has done based on our own view of how experiment results should be calculated, including our stats engine and things like that. Things like how do you handle duplicate events? How do you handle out-of-order timestamps, sequence of messages, and for example, when a visitor moves from HTTP domain to HTTPS domain, so for example, they're checking out your product pages, they're all in HTTP, and then they go to the checkout page that's in HTTPS. So you basically lose the state of the visitor when you go from HTTP to HTTPS because you don't, the session storage is not available across these domains. So you lose the concept of experiment, what the user was doing before they came out to the checkout page. So things like that. So these are our attribution rules. And then the experiment results page, when somebody opens up at Optimizely, in the application, basically queries the results engine. And so that's the overall picture of the stream processing pipeline here. And some of my teams that are working on distributed systems are building these real-time pipelines. And one of the things that we hold ourselves very proud in terms of competing against Adobe and Google Analytics is how much real-time this can get. So imagine 8 billion events a day, and some of our customers are doing headline testing, trying to get results in 5 minutes, 10 minutes from the time of the events hitting the pipeline. So the processing lag, we call that as the processing lag, is usually less than a minute, and our SLA that we tell customers is about less than 10 minutes. So that's pretty aggressive for, for such a high volume and a high throughput pipeline. So we'll come back to this pipeline because I'm going to say, I hope this sets up the problem, the context very well for the problem that we want to discuss. And some of the things that I just also want to highlight here is the ingestion system can actually throw away some events for processing. So for example, you could throw away bots because we are interested in human behavior only, and you get a lot of bots in clickstream events. And then we also provide REST APIs for our customers to use, and it's totally possible for them to just not use it correctly. And so we can, we have a huge queue of invalid events that could come up. So that's the high-level view of the pipeline here. So as we started pivoting into enterprise customers and corporate customers a couple of years back, we basically knew that we wanted to build an enterprise-grade platform, and the enterprise-grade platform really basically is about how are you building your platform scalably, reliably, and basically that addresses the needs, the core needs of the business itself, right? And so what we found is that a number of our enterprise customers were also running Adobe and Google Analytics along with us. So it's just, it's just pretty natural for them. They are using it. They've already used those products. They're very standard industry products. We are the incumbents here, so they are using it along with us. And what we slowly started realizing was that many of the customers actually started aligning their core metrics between these products. So for example, the unique conversions here, the unique visitors here, and the conversions here, like those kind of numbers, the Adobe and Google Analytics products were also displaying. And what the customers started doing is actually they started comparing these two numbers with Optimizely. And essentially, in many, many cases, what we started seeing is that customers saw discrepancies between what they saw with Adobe and what they saw with Optimizely. And so that slowly started becoming a problem for us because customers wouldn't actually start running experiments until they line up those numbers. And so that actually started becoming a huge business issue for us because we are reducing the experimental velocity for our customers. And so the problem itself is actually not that bad. It's really not a problem within our product itself. We quickly realized that it is actually not an issue with the product itself. It's just that our attribution rules that is the rules by which we calculate the results of experiments, was actually different from how Adobe or Google Analytics would have calculated. It's just a different set of rules, like the rules I talked about in terms of duplicate timestamps handling, out-of-sequence handling, and things like that. And so, however, it became very important that we actually tell our customers why they are seeing results the way they are seeing, right? I mean, we still had the responsibility to explain why, if they sent 1 million events to Optimizely, why only 600,000 or 700,000 of them was being shown up in the results page as unique conversions or unique visitors. So that part was still incumbent on us. And so like the explaining of attribution rules on such a high volume and a high throughput pipeline was the part that was was actually starting to become a bigger organizational problem for us, because customers wouldn't move past running experiments until they lined up these numbers. And so if you think about it, it's actually, these events have already been stored on the results database. They've already been applied with the attribution rules that I talked about. Going back in time and, when each of these customer inquiry comes, going back in time and explaining, okay, for these days, like for a month here, when you compare it with Adobe and when you compare it with Optimizely, this is exactly why you're seeing the numbers they're doing, was a pretty tall order for us, because it's, for one thing, we lack the scalable tools for us to be able to do that. And for another thing, computation has already happened on the data set, and we've already produced those data sets. And so thinking about, retail customers having sent us billions of events and being able to rationalize out why those events were treated the way they were through these query processing was going to be very difficult. And so that was really the problem that we were facing. And if you think about it, if you didn't address this problem convincingly, it actually is going to become a data trust issue for our customers on our data. And we hold trust as very, very important for us. And so that's why we took this problem to be very critical for our business. So we started tracking these inquiries that were coming into our support system queue. We started tagging them as data trust. And this is actually a real snapshot of our Zendesk support queue of our customer support team. And essentially, over last year, the number of tickets, started ballooning up. This is actually from, all of the new, imagine, you've got a huge deal and customers want to, start running experiments. They have this problem and they're blocked. They're not running experiments. And so the problem here really is, the first thing we noticed was that the support team would actually send it directly to the engineering team that was maintaining these data pipelines. We didn't have any scalable tools for analysis for the support team itself, so they would immediately send it back. And the engineering team is just a small team of 6 to 8 engineers. They are building these data pipelines, they have their product roadmap, and then they have to answer these questions. And so we started seeing that the median resolution time for these tickets started slowly ballooning up. And then this was obviously directly impacting our customers' ability to run experiments, because until we gave them an answer, they wouldn't continue with their experiment. And so there was a real problem there. Sorry. And then this was actually a much sobering slide personally for me, because the number of data trust ticket arrivals actually started ballooning too. And so it was like exponentially going up. And I'm sure most of you have been part of a team that has been on bug fixing mode always, and it kind of felt like that. You're just running your wheel, and it's always about answering these kind of questions, and you're just tired from it. And personally, for me, it was very difficult, because I could see the morale of my team dropping, and it's not a great situation at all. And so the key part here is the number of tickets that were coming in, as well as the time it was taking each ticket to get resolved, was getting out of control. And so we knew that there was both an organizational problem here that we needed to solve, as well as an engineering problem. We needed to provide scalable tools to be able to do this. So just zooming out a little bit, this is actually part of a larger problem that we see in organizations about data silos. So data silos really are about how data assets within a company are actually, when they start getting developed by a particular team or organization, they typically tend to get isolated within the organization, even though it is perfectly okay based on your security and privacy guidelines of the organization to make it accessible within your organization. They tend to be very isolated, and they tend to be very closed. In the example that I talked about, it's really about the data pipelines that this team was building was not being made accessible to others. So for example, the customer support team should have been in a perfect position to be able to solve these kind of issues, but they lack the tools to be able to do it. And so this just points to a larger problem of how data silos develop within an organization and how that drags down business results. And then there is just many reasons why this happens, right? For example, there could be just lack of awareness that this data existed. That's one reason, and that's one of the simplest reasons. The other reasons are really interesting about the data aspects itself. So for example, it's about scalable tools for analysis. I mean, these are billions of events. The fact that just such a high volume of events and a lot of computation that needs to happen on top of them for analysis itself prevents the data set from being made accessible and available. I mean, if it is not queryable within a few seconds or minutes, nobody wants to use it. And so that itself prevents the access of these tools. It could be poor data quality too. Like for example, if you see that it is missing data, or if you see that it is just having a lot of duplicates or other things, you're just not going to work with a high quality data set. The other aspect is it could be that you could come from diverse data formats. This is one that's actually very common, is basically you have a customer journey, a customer that goes through your systems. Let me just do a quick time check here, sorry. Yeah. Goes through these systems is basically, you prevent the overall view of the customer journey through your data systems if you have isolated data systems here. So those are all the cultural roots that we have. So how do data silos drag business results here? So it's, if you believe that data-driven decision-making, if you believe that collaboration and cross-pollination of ideas and fully understanding your customer journey is important for you to drive business results, data silos are actually preventing you from doing that. So in our particular case, it's really, it was dragging down our ability for other teams to be helping with the situation here. So what was our solution here? So first thing is that if you think about it, the core problem really is one of data access. Sure, it's a very common problem, structured data set access. But then more importantly, it was about how we can capture the business transformation functions, which is our rules processing engine, very easily and succinctly so that business users can use that. And so we decided to use a combination of techniques and tools to be able to do that. The first technique is about structured data set access with transformations as UDFs, user-defined functions. So transformations are basically allowing any business user to be able to transform the data the way they want to. So for example, depending on a particular customer ticket situation, if they want to take a data set and filter it, or if they want to transform it in a different way, you want to be able to give them the ability to do that. This ability is usually limited by your scale. So if you have a lot of people trying to do this, it's usually very hard to be able to do this. And so the tool that we finalized on is Spark Notebooks, which is based on Apache Zeppelin. And we'll talk about that quickly running on Qubole for the scalability aspects. And so the key part here is to be able to create their own transformation functions on Spark, that's the tool that we ended up going with. And I'll actually show you an example of a real data trust notebook and how business users use it. And so just quick view of the architecture of the data trust playbook. So the playbook is actually used by business users. That's on the right. It's actually a Zeppelin notebook user. On the left is actually how we prepare the data set. So we take a list of unpartitioned events that are coming in from the customer, partition it by account, make it into Parquet data sets. These are basically letting you do OLAP-style queries very, very quickly. And then we host it on Qubole Spark servers to be able to scale out the queries. So this is an example of a data trust notebook. And so the key part to note is that it's actually a Spark notebook running on top of Zeppelin. And so the main part here is that a business user that is trying to use this should be able to just follow a sequence of steps very easily to be able to quickly understand what's going on with a particular customer's inquiry, and then be able to easily rationalize why they're seeing the results that they are seeing on their experiment results page. And so the first part of the data trust notebook is like once you enter your customer account information, it pulls up the Parquet data sets and creates them as a Spark data set for analysis for those particular time ranges. And then the parts below this is the coolest part of the notebook. It's actually very verbal. Like and a business user can go through step by step on this, and then they can jump to what is called a paragraph. A paragraph is basically a way for you to either express your transformations or run a SQL query, and you can actually hide it away from your business user. You just don't have to show it to them at all. And so when a business user comes in with this particular kind of a data trust ticket problem, they enter the account information and they get all of the details about, they actually get a data set prepared for them for analysis, for the time ranges that they are looking at. And then what they also just have to do is go over step by step and follow instructions to be able to find out, go through each attribution rules that I talked about. If you've worked with Amazon EMR, I mean, that's one of my personal favorites of support, which is like, you encounter a technical problem in EMR, you go to their support queue, somebody starts off with, helping you. 2 days later, it transitions to somebody else if the problem is longer, but then they're able to do it very seamlessly. The other person is actually, takes off, it's a very methodical, and it's a very complex problem that they have to debug. And so we really wanted to be able to kind of do that for our business users as well. And so that's the data set preparation. When the business user goes down through the notebook, this is the part where we apply the rules engine that the production systems use. And so this is, they can change the SQL query that they want to or the transformation, Spark transformation they want to, but then right away they get the results that they want to. So it's very quick and easy for analysis here. So a personal favorite of this whole exercise for me was how to train the users. I mean, training is a very important aspect of data access and availability. And it took a lot of effort to create this notebook, to create the data pipelines that are creating these data sets, and then go to GTM teams to be able to use this. And so we were able to train 100+ users, and we've had a lot of usage of this notebook, almost close to 20,000 queries in just 4 months. What about the business results? So first thing is, I mean, this looks like a very easily made up step function, but this is really not. This is actually from Zendesk, actually. And it's actually the median resolution times dropping significantly. So as more business users started using the notebook, they were able to understand, and lesser inquiries started coming into the engineering team. So that freed up the engineering teams, and we had a much bigger support team to be able to handle this. So that was a first win. That was amazing, and that unblocked our customers first to start running experiments quickly. And then most importantly for me personally is when trying to solve a problem of this magnitude is to see if the problem actually goes away. Can you make the problem go away? And this is really something incredible that our support team did, which is actually to take the playbook, parts of the playbook, and actually start writing a lot of knowledge base articles and giving the customers self-service tools for them to actually start debugging the things on their own. So for example, if they're sending invalid events, we gave them a validator tool to be able to validate whether the events that they are sending to Optimizely is valid or not. So customers actually started doing this a lot themselves. And so super happy to see a trickling down of the number of inquiries that came in here. And so this is actually incredibly gratifying for me to see that we actually were able to conquer this problem and let our customers run with the velocity that they want to. And finally, just a call to action note on eliminating data silos in your organization. So I hope most of your organizations have a cohesive data strategy. It could either be coming from your CDO or CISO, but essentially this is a strategy that talks about how you view your data assets. And I want to call out that data silos and removing data silos should be a key part of that strategy. And so one part of the strategy is really about how you are preparing data sets, how you are viewing the data assets in your organization. And so being able to enrich that data and make it accessible within your organization in the confines of your security and the privacy guidelines that you have is very important. And usually you don't see this until you are hit with a problem of the magnitude that I described. And so you don't have to wait for that. There is obviously a lot of talk about in the data engineering community about data ops. Ashish and Joydeep actually have a book on that, on data ops. It's really about culture. How do you bring a culture within the organization on grassroots, bottom-up culture on being able to make data-driven decisions and having scalable tools for analysis and all of those things. So that's definitely one way to think about organization methodology for being able to overcome this. And this whole episode for us actually made us, at Optimizely at least, to be very clear about our own data ambition. So we want our data products that we create for ourselves and for our customers to be trustworthy and open and accessible and simple. And so that's the philosophy that we try to follow every time we build on a data product. And so, sorry, I kind of rushed through this, but just wanted to take some time for you folks to have any Q&A for me. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you to the AV team for setting me up here.
We've got a couple minutes. Any questions?
Yeah, Nikhil.
In the demo that you showed how a web page is prepared by
Yeah.
typing the CSS and the HTML on the page. I
Right.
presume you also have APIs that you can just code up against and not have to create a page on the UI.
So this one is cosmetic on the browser, right? Like how you make the changes. For that, I don't think we have APIs for that. It is really about opening up here and you want to preview the variations that you're creating, right? So it's right here on the app itself. And there's a lot of interesting things here as well. It's not just CSS as well. Like you have what they call the single page apps too, like apps that actually have an application running on the page itself. So we are able to provide variations for those kind of pages as well.
Another way of asking it would be, if I want to switch behavior based on an experiment.
I see. Oh, I see. Yeah, so that, absolutely, yeah. For that, we have APIs. I thought you were asking about the creation of the variations itself.
I know you're talking about the raw feeds coming in from the customer side. Do you actually have something around PII, like personally identifiable information, fed into Optimizely if they want to do analysis based on users? And how are you handling if you do something that might be under compliance or privacy issues on the Optimizely side?
Absolutely. We take privacy and security very seriously. And so the event ingestion system really is the one that is actually vetting out all the PII information, IP addresses, names, email addresses, and all of that. So it's cleansing it, all of that, and then the rest in aggregate is what we are looking at for experiment results.
So you don't do user-specific targeting and so forth. So that information doesn't even come to Optimizely.
Yeah, so we don't do targeting based on that information. Yeah, that's right.
On your processing slide, can you maybe dive in a little bit into one of the slides? Yeah, back one. The real-time streaming processing and then the result queries. What are you kind of using in the back end to do that generally?
Absolutely, yeah. So for event ingestion, actually, we have Kafka. And then for stream processing, we have Samza. And then for the results query engine, we have HBase as the basic database. But then we've built our own query engine on top of that. So there's actually multiple videos that my team has done in conferences and presentations for how we actually push the limits for stream processing on Samza. Definitely encourage you to take a look at it.
That is our time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for coming.